as we come in. Whoa. The Old Pink House is a very popular restaurant for lunch or dinner. Coated in white stucco to make it look like it was white stucco and turned this out to be not very happy. Just theater, beautiful Victorian theater inside there. Sometimes they show movies, other times the theater performances on stage or concerts. And that was the very first building here in Savannah to have air conditioning. You know how they did that in 1921? They had big blocks of ice down in the basement. They were blowing fans over it to get the cool air up, and a lot like New Orleans there. It's got a lot of French influence on the outside.
Oh, okay.
Had some fans for. They started here in 1970, the old armory building on Old Street, and they started restoring buildings all throughout the historic district here. Big restored corner over there on my left is the Owen Thomas House Museum, and that is an excellent house museum. If you ever get a chance to see any of these, that one's lovely in Savannah to have indoor plumbing. Architect William J. designed that house when he was 21 years old. He designed it for it at the time. It didn't catch on right away, but they had running water, flushing toilets, and showers 8 years before the one right was originally a merchant marine hospital. At time restaurant. The center of the road here, you'll see that huge bell on the stand in the middle of the road. That was Savannah's first fire bell. So they were using that bell. They used that when there was about 8 square created. What they would do is they would ring the bell, number of the square, let the firemen know which square was on fire. Now this is Colonial Park Cemetery here on our left-hand side. This is the oldest cemetery in Savannah. They started burying in here in 1750, and they ended in 1853. By that time, this was completely filled up. There's over 10,000 people buried in there. And now it doesn't look cavalry because it was the largest fenced-in area, and a lot of the headstones got knocked over during that time. What the folks did was after the army left town, they gathered as many headstones that they could save, and they put them up against the back wall of the cemetery on display. They didn't have a map like we have today of cemeteries to even know where to put the headstones back. They turned this into a 2-lane road, so they pushed the cemetery fence line back, created a sidewalk on the other side of the street there. And a lot of people ask, are the bodies still under there? And the answer is yes. They didn't have the medical knowledge that we have today, and they presumed that if you moved, any of those come right back out into the air and everybody would start getting sick and dying again. And so they just created a rule that you stay where you lay, and they built the city over top of a lot of burial areas. This little grassy area just beyond the cemetery, that was going to be a dueling ground at one time. It was dueling for illegal. They did still something. Is the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. This is a beautiful Catholic cathedral, also a minor basilica since 2019, and this was modeled after Notre Dame. It's made a little similar, not identical. This is open for touring during the weekdays from 10 to 4. It is like 100 times more beautiful on the inside. You can't see as much as if you actually go ahead and walk through. Yeah. But it is fabulous in there. A chance. That's something that you might like to see. Now this is Lafayette Square. This was named for the Marquis de Lafayette. He did spend quite a bit of time here during the Revolutionary War. The French were helping the Continental Army fight the British for independence. So there is a lot of French influence on the buildings throughout the city as far as the wrought iron and cast iron go. As we come around the corner here on my right-hand side, this really good museum house. If you ever get a chance to see this, This is where Juliet Gordon Lowe lived when she was married, and here she started the Girl Scouts. The Carriage house behind that house was the very first Girl Scout headquarters. There, from the Andrew Lowe house on the other side, is the Hamilton Turner Inn. Now that's a beautiful bed and breakfast today, but that started out as a private residence for Samuel Hamilton and his family. Yeah. Now this house on my left, on the corner here, this is actually still in the same family that built it in the 1800s. There's not too many of those left. I've only found 4 so far here in the historic district that are still in the same families that built it. The little spot, as you can see, for breakfast and lunch. They're open from 8 to Jones Street here. Jones Street is a little bumpy because it's a cobblestone street, but the trees make a canopy over the top of the road. Most of the houses, now this part of Jones is going to leave the upper floors for the private residence, and the downstairs would have been the kitchen and the servants' quarters. Now they've renovated all these downstairs and turned them into apartments. This house on my right is a completely private residence. There's no apartments inside there, and there's several of those still here on Jones Street. You know that saying, keep up with the Joneses? Well, this is kind of where it started. You know how they have they had electricity? Yeah. And a lot of people used to keep it that way on the outside. That house right there on the corner just went up for sale, number 24. And that one is actually on sale here on Jones Street.
There we go.
And most of these, depending on how many floors you have, go from 2 to 4 million, you know, so that's a really good deal back here. That just got rented out north and south. This is named for William Bull. He was a very good friend of General Oglethorpe. He was down by the river to get the pattern started for the city. This is also the dividing line between east and west in the historic district. And now we're headed into Monterey Square. This is the square that's right before Forsyth Park. Did you all get to Forsyth's death? He became the father of the American cavalry. Taught them how to fight on horseback, how wealthy you were, how much iron you had on your house. And so this is a pretty wealthy square. As we do come around the corner, the house that's going to be on my right-hand side on the corner is the very first duplex that was built here in Savannah. I was told that was built by a father for his 2 daughters, but we're not speaking to each other. Now, I don't know if they ever resolved that particular issue, but since they were twins, he made them identical on both sides. And now this is the Mercer Williams House Museum. This was featured in the book and the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and quite a few other movies as well. Every bit of architecture on this house that you think is wood, that is all cast iron. Wow. The framework is cast iron. And now, as you do look down the street, and you look down Wall Street, you're going to see Forsyth Park. Unfortunately, right now, you will not see the big white fountain from here. Usually, just beyond that gate there is where the fountain would be. They did take that out for renovating. They did send it to Alabama, where it had been renovated in 1985 to the same company, because they know how to do it, right? And they're supposed to have it done by Christmas time. This is the very first synagogue that was built here in Savannah. The only way you can tell is from the Star of David over the door. The only one in the United States built in that neo-Gothic style. On it to the next square, you'll see the Methodist Church right in line with the street between.
And then Dad, you gotta have an armed guard at the door.
Morning.
Because they're Muslims.
As we come up the street here, these are private residences. The one with the white front coming up here on my right, that they call the wedding cake house. Because of all the detail on the outside of that.
It's beautiful.
They did build houses very large back then. It was common to have 10 to 14 children. Plus, they were multi-generational homes. The top of this yellow building with the black accents, all the way at the top is a very fancy ironwork that looks like lace made out of iron. They have the Kehoe Iron Foundry here in town, and Mr. Kehoe convinced everybody that you look so much more wealthy if you had iron on your house. And so, of course, he became a very wealthy man.
Marketing.
This is the Six-Pence Pub. This is a good little lunch or dinner here, little British pub. Right across the street here
looks
is the
quiet.
Chocolatier. There's a whole adventure in chocolate inside there.
Your chocolate.
Yeah, Chocolatier. A corner that has amazing architecture all the way to the top. That was originally the Scottish Rites Temple Freemason Lodge. Here is the old Armory building. That is where the Savannah College of Art Design started in 1979. It took them 4 years to restore that building. It was in such terrible shape in 1979. But when that was an armory building, those arched windows were doorways. You just drive your wagon in there, pick up the artillery or ammunition you needed, and then come on out the other side. You'll notice how thickly the walls are here in the second archway. It used to be that way all the way around the building. Explosive down in the basement area of that building, and in case that where somebody was having a bad day, they wanted it to blow up, not out. And luckily, they never had to test that theory out. This building on my right here, this is actually condos that were built in the 2000s. In 1970, the Historic Society created a rule that anything new built in the historic district had to look like the buildings around it. So they used the architectural style of these 1800 buildings on the other side of the street, incorporated it into the newer building, and they did such a good job. The only way you can tell the difference is from the clear glass in the windows of the newer building, where this still has the older wavy glass. It looked like in 1733, that's what most of the military looked like back at that time. If you had them facing south with his sword drawn, part of the reason for having the 13th colony was to be a military buffer between Florida and the rest of the colonies in Hispania. This is the oldest, longest running theater in Georgia. This was originally built in 1818. And this is always live performances on stage. It's always either a musical, a comedy, or an improv. And new performance every month, which is really, really fun. In 1920, they did have a big fire here, and so that's why it looks much more Art Deco than it originally did. When they rebuilt it differently. If you look to my right-hand side, you'll see the Girl Scout emblem on the front gate of this building. That is where Juliet Gordon-Law was born and raised, that building. You can tour inside there also. I'm sure you noticed how dog-friendly we are here. We have four of these Wolfgang bakeries for dog biscuits and treats here in the historic district.
Balls.
Now this is Wright Square. Wright Square, back in the 1700s, is also known as Courthouse Square or Justice Square. It's always been a courthouse on this corner straight ahead of us. Diagonally across the square on the left-hand side is where the CVS pharmacy is today. That was the location of where the jail was in the 1700s. Underneath that building is the very first cemetery. The Indians helped the settlers survive the first winter and forth with each other for the next 10 years while General Overflow was here. Here's the difference between this colony and all the other British colonies was when General Overflow arrived here. There was a friendly tribe of Indians that had already been trading with South Carolina. And there was a woman here named Mary Musgrove. She and her husband owned a trading post. He was British. She was part British possible for the generals to negotiate towards Washington to take care of everything up north. When those battles were completed, Georgia was so appreciative of everything he had done. They gave him Mulberry Grove Plantation. Now, he did not accept that right away because he was originally from Rhode Island and he knew how hot it gets here in the summertime. But George Washington convinced him that it was a great honor and he should take it, so he did eventually move his family here. Unfortunately, about 2 years after he moved here, he went out riding in the summertime and he forgot his hat. He got heat stroke. And the medical was so bad back then, he ended up dying from it. Straight ahead of us here is the City Hall building, and this building looks like a Capitol building because Savannah was the very first capital of Georgia. Up above the columns on the second balcony, there's 2 women's statues. Now, we don't have a lot of women's statues, but up there, the one on the left represents art. She has a features palette in her hand. And the one on the right represents color. She has a sailing